Hello and welcome to Fan the Flames podcast with me, your host, Robert Stevenson. And, just before I pressed record, I had an idea of what I was going to talk about. But as I hit the button, I noticed that that idea went for a little walk. It kind of just disappeared out of my head. And I was going to stop the recording and start again. And I thought, well, what would happen if I didn't do that? What would happen if I just kept going and allowed something to arrive in this conversation as I share it with you? And as I say that, it makes me think about how sometimes we go about changing something. We go about maybe changing a behavior, or we go about hitting a goal, or, whether that goal is about creating our book, which is something that's in my head, or whether it's about losing weight, which is another thing that's kind of in my head. And when we think about making those goals or those changes, we have a set of actions or behaviors that we want to create, and they don't always work out. It doesn't always happen the way that we want it to happen. A little bit like me going, oh, I'm going to do an episode on, and as I hit record, the episode kind of drifts out of my head. And it makes me wonder if actually what's being called for here is about being present. It's about being present to what is, about being present to what's arising, whatever that might be, and how we get comfortable in that space. How do we get comfortable with uncomfortable? How do we get comfortable with change? How do we get comfortable with not knowing? There's a friend of mine who runs a company, and they do workshops that are all about not having the answer, about not knowing, and they explore this idea with organizations about, we have all of these experts that sit in our company, but sometimes nobody knows what to do. And how can we get comfortable with that? How can it be okay to not know? How can that be valued and shared and celebrated, a sense of unknowing? And sometimes when we don't know what we want to do and we're not sure what we're going to say, that we sort of get out of our way and we allow perhaps wisdom to come forth. We allow ourselves to channel maybe, and the trueness of us begins to flow through us because our thinking's gotten out of the way, and we can just be really present to what is. So what am I present to as I say this? I guess I'm present to the idea that this human experience can be challenging, it can be difficult. It can feel unrewarding. It can feel like one moment we're on an amazing high where everything is going exactly how we wanted it to be, and perhaps more so. And then the next moment we can be in a right low and a real kind of funk, in a sense of, well, I thought life was this, and now I'm over here, and what does this mean, and what's that about? And how do we just kind of get present to that? How do we just recognize that that's part of life, that's a part of change? And one of the reasons why we sometimes avoid change is because it can be difficult and it can be uncomfortable, and we can be in a space of not knowing what's going to happen on the other side of that change. We have a desire, but as we go through the change, we start to go, I don't really know what's going to come from this, what's going to come out of this. And so in those moments, we back down, we stop, we pause, we pull ourselves back, because that unknown is so maybe big and scary, right? But what happens if we just stay present to it? What happens if we just stay present to how we're feeling and just accept it and be compassionate with ourselves around it? I often work with people that are really driven. They really want to create something in this world, whether it's for them, for their family, for their companies. They have desires and they're like, I'm going to go for that. I'm going to make that happen. And in the doing that, they can put a lot of pressure on themselves. They put a lot of pressure, but not a lot of compassion. And part of my work is to help them be compassionate as they strive to achieve what they want to achieve, but also recognizing that, hey, how can you be compassionate to yourself here? How can you be caring and loving to yourself as you try to achieve these things, even when you get them wrong, even when you're not quite sure or where you're navigating or where you're going? How do you stay present, compassionate in the striving, in the attempting to achieve? And so as I've sat here and I've kind of just spoken about what's come to mind, I wonder, what does it bring to mind for you? How does it support you in thinking about, or challenge you in your own thinking? How does it challenge you to take time just to be present? How does it challenge you to do things that are just for you? You know, one of the things I recognize in this world where a lot of us are supporting and helping others, that we're not always taking time to support and help ourselves. And maybe if we took a little bit more time to help ourselves, we could do more helping of the others. And so, you know, that's an interesting concept as well, you know, taking time to be present to our own needs, taking time to be present to our own wants, and what might those things be? And as I think about that, I start to go, well, what is it that we're not doing? And I don't mean that in a sense of, you know, what's the step we're not taking to achieve our goal, but what's that thing that we're not doing that brings us joy, that brings us laughter, that brings us fun, that brings us a stillness or a quietness, or that allows us to be grounded? What's that we're not present to, and that we could get present to? So this whole conversation, although I think it was supposed to be about passions, has kind of shifted into something that's about presence and about being here for yourself. How do you be here for you so that you can be there for others? But you've got to start with you. And, you know, this conversation has allowed me to be very present with myself as I talk about it. And I'm curious about, has it enabled you to be present for you? And what would help you to be present for you? Would that be a time to think session? Would that be a walk in the park? Would that be a swim in the sea? What is that for you that allows you to be present to what's coming up for you? Perhaps a meditation. And meditation isn't just about sitting there with your legs crossed and humming. It's, you know, it might just be a mindful walk or a mindful moment. It could even be doing the washing up and just allowing your thoughts to arise as you clean those plates. So this has been a bit of a random conversation that started off with an idea and that drifted away. And I decided to stay with what was present to me and just allow that to flow and to be in the space. So I'm curious, what's that enabled for you? What's that allowed you to think about? Or perhaps what's it allowed you to stop thinking about? You know, we have busy lives, we have busy minds, and we're doing. And sometimes it's about being present, being still, being kind, being compassionate, being loving. And if you can be those things for yourself, then you can be those things for others. And if you can be those things for yourself, you can allow others to be those things for you. So this is a very present Robert Stevenson signing out and wishing you a wonderful day. And do let me know, what has this made you think about or contemplate? Share in the comments or send me a message. I would love to hear, and I look forward to having another present moment with you very soon.